So first of all, I'd like to introduce our elder, Wendy Phillips, who will start our session, and then I'll introduce our speakers.
Wonderful. So at this time, when we gather in more than 2 or 3, as Anishinaabe people, we usually, when we smudge, but we understand that there's some medical reasons as to why we can't do that today. And then the other component that we do is that we also give greetings and our gratitude towards creation. So we'll say those words and then we'll begin. So bonjour, Megazito dem, awero kaza bejgo Indigenous, basaksing na dunji, kiwaden zibi na dunjaba, jaman magay parwad min down. Chimigwach can gay go gajak tot, nishan gijgat, chimigwach, asokanak, chimigwach wabano mado, jamano mado, benchmak mado, kiwad mado, chimigwach aki, chimigwach nimki benashi, chimigwach majika, chimigwach mino bamadzawin, chimigwach dwaiwaganak, pwaganak, sheshganak, torkmak, chimigwach bwamnak, chimigwach dodamak. At this time, we give our acknowledgments to the one who has created everything and everyone for this good day. And we also give acknowledgments to what we describe as the Madok, or the guardians of the 4 directions. And we also give acknowledgments to what we describe as Minobamadzawin, that this is a good way of life. For many Indigenous peoples, our worldview is that we don't have a religion, that it is a way of life that we describe is to live within the laws of creation. And our concept is when we begin to live outside of those laws, then that's when suffering begins. So we give acknowledgments for all these tools that we have to allow us to have a good life, to allow us to be well, to be healthy. And so we give acknowledgments to our drums, our pipes, our shakers, all these items that we carry in our bundles. We also give acknowledgments to what we describe as our helpers. For us to do this work and to complete our vision, our dreams, our goals, our wishes, that it takes help to be successful, to fulfill those achievements. So we give acknowledgments for those helpers that we see and for those that we don't see. We also give acknowledgments to what we describe as our Dodem Dodamuk, and these are our clans. For many Indigenous nations around the world, that some nations do have clans and some don't. And we give acknowledgments that these are our families, our kinships, and these are the fabrics that bring our communities together. So at this time, it's a privilege to be able to welcome each of you here. From being from this territory, that it's been a great time to share all this with you the last few weeks. So I'm very grateful to see some familiar faces that keep on coming back, and very grateful that each of you have come here. We also, for us, when we talk about our work here at U of T, and when we talk about this process of reconciliation, that we give acknowledgments in that relationship. And we give acknowledgments and gratitude that for us, we're very thankful for the nations that lived on this territory at one time. So we put our thoughts to the Huron Wyandot, to the Seneca, and then the Mississaugas that are locally around here. And we give acknowledgements as well that Toronto is a meeting place. It is one that many nations from around the world acknowledge this as their home, and we give acknowledgements to that. So we're very grateful that we're able to do this type of work here. So on this topic, that this is for us, when we talk about this year as well, 2019 is the United Nations year for Indigenous languages. So we felt that this was a very important topic, that especially for the university in its obligations in fulfilling the TRC. So I will pass it on to Bill and say which.
So thank you all for being here today, and first of all, acknowledge that the topics for this particular session was a suggestion from you, our regular attenders of the, I often refer to as great expectations because I was so wanting this to work out well. Now I can just go with great exploration because we've achieved our expectations. Really pleased with how this has developed. And I want to thank the staff and others that have worked diligently to make sure the sessions happen. I really wanted to get to the earlier sessions. I was traveling or recovering from travel, but I'm really pleased to be here. This is a project that is near and dear to my heart. And if you're going, who on earth is up there talking? I'm Bill Goff. I'm the Vice Principal Academic and Dean here at UTSC. And I'm just really, really pleased to be introducing this final seminar for the spring 2019 Great Explorations season. Be sure to fill out the feedback form and let us know, make other suggestions for great topics that we can cover in these series. And of course, we'll have another set of seminars in the fall. So I want to introduce the individuals that are here to present, although I think there are more here than I've listed, so I'll wing it a bit. You have a list here, and unfortunately Bruce Stonefish couldn't be with us, but he has his brother here, so Brent Stonefish will be stepping in for him. First of all, I'm going to introduce the academics. A year or so ago, we made a great new hire as an assistant professor of linguistics, and that is Safieh Moghaddam. Okay, Moghaddam. Okay. None of these names are easy, although Brent is. She teaches, Safieh teaches several courses, including Introduction to Linguistics, Syntax, English Grammar, Morphology, Sociolinguistics, Language Diversity, and Language Universals. Her research mainly focuses on the syntax and morphology of endangered languages, so she's perfect for this project. Teaching and learning strategies, online learning, hybrid learning, and the structure of online courses, which is a future direction for this project. She's a native speaker of Persian and has in-depth knowledge and expertise in several languages, many languages actually, French, Turkish, Arabic, Sorani Kurdish, if I get that right, Pashto, and Devon. So languages that I've never heard of. She's an expert in. So that's why she's been such a great hire. The second academic member and lead on this project is Professor Juvenal.
Good.
Last year, he actually wrote it out for me, and I learned it for a few events, and then I've forgotten it. But his students refer to him as Professor Juvenal. So I'm going to refer to him as Professor Juvenal here. And his last name is, there's an interesting story behind it, because Juvenal was also experienced language suppression as a child, and his last name is actually a sentence in one of the languages from whence he comes, and maybe he'll explain that later because it's a great story. Juvenal has been here, Professor Juvenal has been here, I think, since 2000, if I got that right. He also teaches syntax courses in the Center for French and Linguistics and a graduate program in French. His research focuses on the role of functional categories in the syntax of natural languages and parametric variation. Sounds very, very academic, and he takes that kind of knowledge and applies it. It involves extensive fieldwork on various non-related and less studied languages, including Creole, Haiti. So if you thought I was introducing languages that you hadn't heard of with Safieh, here's a few more. Is it Fongbe? Is that close enough? Okay. Karindi, Kenya Yarwanda, I'm butchering it, I'm sure, Malagazi, Mandarin Cantonese, I get that one. Endangered Languages are his next project. So when the TRC report and the University of Toronto responded to that TRC report, Professor Juvenal stood up and said, this is something that I want to do. This is something I want to do for the rest of my career too. And so we're going to hear some of the unfoldments that have happened since he took that commitment. And we're really, really pleased that he has done so. Not here today is Bruce Stonefish, who's been the main connection that we've had with the Delaware First Nation. He is of the Turtle Clan of the Lunaapeew and Bear Clan of the Anishinaabe. We've worked very meaningfully with him. He is one of the few Lunaapeew language speakers that remain. There's just a few of them. But we're very pleased to have his equally talented younger brother, Brent, here today, who has been actively involved in the project as well. So their collective talk, and there's these great, are you one of these great students? Yes, there's a number of great students that Professor Juvenal works with, listed here that are joining us today. So their talk, Indigenous Language Revitalization, the Lunaapeew Project, asks the question, how do you save and revitalize an undocumented language that is almost extinct, down to 1 or 2 or 3 speakers? This talk explores the challenges and new ways of documenting and revitalizing endangered languages with a focus on the Lunaapeew language of the Delaware First Nation. So it's a work in progress, and we're thrilled to have them report on that progress. So please join me in welcoming our speakers. So there will be a question and answer period. We assume that you're all adults here, and if you need to refresh your drinks and things like that, you can do that. There are, as you know, if you did before, there's some washrooms across the hall. So I turn it over now to our great speakers.
All right. Quinganawa Lomwa, Nidishinzi Achkok Paposi, Ndami Minzi Takwach, Nino Jai El Napawi Lakawit, Ndil Napawi, Anishik Kishalamokwan, Elamilian Yon Kwai Kishkwik. My name is Brent Stonefish. I am Lunaapeew. I am Turtle Clan. And I am from Lunaapeew Lakawi. And Lunaapeew Lakawi translates to Delaware Nation. We are a small community, approximately 45 minutes southwest of London, Ontario. Our population is approximately 600 community members and about 1,200 that are band members. Our community has been in southern Ontario since 1792. We originally, our people, the Lunaapeew, also known as Delaware, originate from the East Coast. Okay, Manhattan, New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, that area, all along the Hudson River up until just south of Albany. Actually, I was just there over the weekend doing some work on behalf of our First Nation. I am a counselor for our Chief and Council. It's an elected position. This is my first term And actually, we go into elections this month, and elections are actually June 3rd. So I'm hoping to get back in. It's a 2-year term. We always say that it's not long enough, but it's a system, an elected system that has been imposed by the Canadian government through the Indian Act, and we're attempting to change the way we govern ourselves based on our own laws and customs. So that's one of the pieces of work that we've been working on. Just a little more background on myself. I've actually attended Trent University as an undergraduate, and I also did my master's in environmental studies at York University, and I'm currently on leave from OISE UT doing my Doctor of Education in Educational Administration. So one of the key projects that I've been working on is creating a school within our First Nation that is solely based on the foundation of our culture and language. So that brings me to this project. And this project, I introduced myself in our language, and that's some of the very small amount of language that I know. I was fortunate enough to be in a class for a month last year to understand the mechanics and understand the necessity for our language. And one of the things that in introducing our language, the different names that we've been called are Delaware, and Delaware is actually a name given to us by the Dutch during the 1600s, and it was after a duke or a lord de la Warre. We were his Indians. So as you can see, that is why we've gone back to using Lunaapeew, using our term for ourselves. And Lunaapeew means the ones who came from thought. And our word for the creator is Ki-Shalamokwang. And Ki-Shalamokwang means the one who thought us into existence. Okay? And that goes back to our creation story. So you can see how that is connected to each other, our term for ourselves. And one of the things, the reason that we've decided to reach out to UT Scarborough is that we are classified under the UN Index as a near extinct language. At the time of having conversations with Juvenal and Bill, we had 2 language speakers left. As of this presentation today, we have 1 first language speaker left in all of the world. Okay? The Lenape people there's 2 communities that reside in southern Ontario. There's us, Alnapawi-Lakawit, or Moravian Indian Reserve 47, or Delaware Nation, Moravian of the Thames, or as we affectionately call Bucktown. And then there's another one upstream from us, and they are Muncie, Delaware. They approximately have about 250 community members that live on reserve and approximately 500 on their band list. There are also other Lenape communities on Turtle Island or North America. There are 3 federally recognized communities in the United States, 2 in Oklahoma, 1 in Wisconsin. We have 3 Lenape communities that are state recognized within New Jersey. And then there are other communities that self-identify within Delaware and Pennsylvania and Kansas. Okay, and approximately, if you put all those numbers together, there are approximately about 15,000 Lenape people with 1 first language speaker left. Okay, and fortunately for us, she resides in our community. And she is a 77-year-old woman who is working day and night to teach 5 students at this current time the language. She's in her 5th year with 5 apprentices, and this year they've committed every day, Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day to learning the language. She is a determined woman who is determined to revitalize our language. And the 5 students we have are phenomenal and dedicated, and some they range in age from their 20s to their 60s. Okay, there's 4 women and 1 man, and the hope is by the end of this cycle, by the end of August, they will be teaching various age groups within the community. Currently, our chief and council are working on creating a strategic plan, and as part of that plan, we are hoping to introduce this project as part of that plan. We've had initial studies with Diane in September, but she indicated that her dedication for this full year up until the end of August was for those 5 students. And she's well aware of this project, and now we're at the stage where we're setting the stage as a next step. So there's lots to be done, and there's lots of dedication within our community. I act as a facilitator. I act as somebody that tries to make this happen. And in the interim, trying to learn the language as miserably as I can right now. And with my son and my daughter. So there's lots to be done, and I know I'm taking up a little more time than I should be for this presentation, but I needed to give you the context. Needed to give you that our language is in dire straits, and that as much as help as we can get in revitalizing our language, because our hope is that we will one day have first language speakers again. You know, and that's not impossible. You know, and that's happened with languages across the world. And so we want this to happen for our First Nation as well. So after that context, I'll talk a little bit later, but I'll hand it over to Juvenal.
Thanks, Brent, and thanks, Dean. He just said that they have 5 students who are trying to learn the language, and we have 5 research assistants at UTSC, including Matt, our IT guy. There are 3 young girls over there, Kristen, Mercy, Veronica, and a young guy, Mekong, who is out of town and will be back shortly. So it's 5 against 5. So this kid came in exactly through the same story as what Brent was mentioning, because what happened is Wendy one day came to our retreat in the linguistics department, French and linguistics, and she talked about Lunaapeew. When she mentioned that there was only 1 speaker left, you can feel what I felt. Okay? It was a call for action, and I decided to jump in, and then I was lucky that Safieh joined the same year. And when I mentioned this to my advanced syntax course in linguistics, these kids were in the room and they said, "Who did that? How come we lost that language?" And they decided to commit themselves to help to save the language. So this is our army, and we promise officially that we will deliver. Second, I had had a deal with Bill, okay? Bill. It was public, right? Okay, yeah, sure. Both. Mine now. So we presented part of this project last year to the Academic Council, and I made a deal with him. I told him, Bill, if we save the language, here's what we have to do. You know, when you do gym, okay, you see, okay, I was very, I had a lot of weight, then I do some exercise, and then I lost the weight, and then you show your results, right? And so people take pictures, they say before and after. So the deal is, before, which is now, there's only one speaker left. After, we want to have 100,000 speakers, which means that one day we will teach Lunaapeew on this campus. And we will learn the language, not teach the structure of the language, we want to learn the language. That is a way to show in a meaningful way that we care and we walk our talk. So back to our business. So I want to give you a roadmap of what I'll be talking very briefly. When we talk about revitalization, what do we mean? What are we doing with this one? Okay, what is the status of indigenous languages in Canada? And then the Lunaapeew project. What is it? What are we doing? What are the challenges? What is the context? How do we do that? What did we commit to do? And what will be our next step? So revitalization. You hear this word revitalization or language documentation of preservation, but there's a little difference. So these are well-developed academic subdisciplines within linguistics. But when we mention documentation, it means just collect data, okay, analyze them, publish, become famous, and archive them somewhere in the library, right? There are a lot of people who do that type of work, which is actually very great, very important. But revitalization is actually all of that, plus rebuild and promote. So we are a revitalizer. We don't document the language to put it in the library. We want to rebuild the language. So the outcome, the deliver, are these tools that we would need in order for all of us to start learning the language. What is the status of the indigenous languages? There are recent studies that show that actually the situation is very bad. So there is this author, Fontaine, in 2017, gave us a sense of how we are suffering, and there are other studies like Simons and Lewis in 2013, based on UNESCO standard, where they show when can we talk about language endangerment. So in this chart, you will see that English will be like on the top. It's an international language. It's taught for knowledge spreading, for trade, for policy, etc. So it's an archaic language, but if you look down in the red box, you see very dramatic situation where languages are claimed to be definitely or severely or critically endangered. So you see this definition, and based on what Brent just said, actually Lunaapeew is somewhere here, if not there. Okay. So the language is almost gone. The big picture in Canada, 24 languages are claimed to be vulnerable, 19 are definitely endangered, 17 are severely endangered, and 35 are critically endangered. If you do the math, 43, 60, 95 languages. are in critical need of revitalization. But there are more facts. I was reading the 2019 federal budget. And here is what I found. So they claim that there are 70 indigenous languages that are spoken by roughly 260,000 indigenous people. Jeff Seal, who gave a talk, the second talk after Wendy, told that there was about 1,673,785 indigenous people in Canada. So if you do the math, it means that actually, if you divide 260,000 by that number, you need something like 15% of the indigenous population. Only 15%, which means that 85% of the indigenous population don't speak their mother tongue. Can you imagine, to talk about Ontario, if we claim that Ontario population, only 15% of the Ontario population speaks English, or in French, Quebec, okay? Just think of what that means. But there is worse. 1 in 5 over the age of 65 report an indigenous language as their mother tongue, which means that 80% of the population over 65 don't speak an indigenous language. And 1 in 10 children report an indigenous language as their first language, and only about 1 in 7 children report being able to carry conversation in indigenous language, which means that roughly only 14% of the indigenous population in key sections speak that language. But this is there's even worse situation. In Canada, indigenous languages don't have the same, are not in the same situation. They have the same status, but they are not in the same situation. Like, for instance, Inuit. Okay, this is a language that's taught. There are many people who speak that language. There's a big community. So the language is kind of strong. Okay, we'll use this word, strong languages versus weak languages. So when we look at these statistics, there are even indigenous languages that don't have more than 5 speakers. So that shows you how the type of challenge that we have. So our project, the UTSC Indigenous Civilization Project, has the following vision. So we believe that children are the future of indigenous language. Second, we believe that if we use our knowledge in terms of curriculum development and technology, okay, we believe that we can fill that gap. We believe that we can provide the tools so that the community can learn the language. So our plan is to develop the following. First, digital resources. So we give you some examples here, including dictionaries and corpora and other resources to support education content and train the teachers. Okay. So that's one goal. The second one is to develop e-learning tools for the indigenous language instruction. And the third one is to develop an infrastructure, an IT infrastructure to support the development of learning apps. So but this part is not in there.
Oh, just one more. Okay, yeah.
So this approach, this idea about technology is actually well studied. So Carmen Jenny showed that there are some good outcomes when we bring technology inside this type of task, this revitalization task. Now it's time for me to talk about the specific the first project, the Lunaapeew project. So as I mentioned, we want to make Lunaapeew a fluent language, and our framework is based on 4 pillars: the community involvement, ways of living, indigenous knowledge, and other things. And we believe that those are the key components for this project to succeed. In terms of the architecture of the project, so there is the Lunaapeew team. It's on Bruce and Brent's side. UTSC team. That's our army here. And in this interface, the online platform. So we developed and host this online data entry form. It's already functional. We have it now in the system. Second, the Lunaapeew people will be providing the data via our online form, and then we save it in our database, and then we retrieve those data, and we analyze them, and we build stuff from those data. So that's the general picture. So let me show you an example of, I mentioned a type of tool that we'll be developing, including dictionaries, okay? So we already developed this e-form for dictionaries. So there are about 8,455 words. English word. So what they do, so with the support of the Dean's office, we were able to provide them with computers, so they have laptops, they have internet connection, and then we work remotely, we don't have to meet. They access our system, they will enter a word in English, we'll have an illustration there. So there are some areas that we are carrying the most. So they provide, there is a word there, okay, we give them an English word, they provide an Lunaapeew translation. If there is a synonym, they add it. If there is a second definition, they add a definition. They leave this second row, the category area and the IPA, that's the phonetic transcription, because that is our duty, the UTSC team. So they record their voice. They give us an example, a sentence. So they take that word, they give us a sentence, and then they translate the sentence that they give us in English, and they recode that sentence. The map, can you show a line case?
So we are currently switching over to a new website hosted at cil.utsc.toronto.ca. So the dictionary form there is this edit dictionary form here. So what you just saw in the slides was our new word form here. So if someone were to submit their data, they could enter a word here like maybe dog, and then they'll start to see some suggestions there that they can enter into the database. And maybe I'll do doubt, like that. And then you continue to fill out the rest of the forms, as Juvenal mentioned. And then when you're all done, you can submit the word. Of course, there are some words in English that might not translate directly to the language. So we also have the option to submit no translation to our database. So that saves a lot of time and energy. So I'll put back the slides, and I believe we will be doing another little demo in a little bit about the dictionary form itself. I'll go back to the right side. There you go. The idea, why are we doing this way? Because there
there are two ways of doing language documentation. You can go, we've done that. Okay, Safieh will be talking about Tabani, which is an invented language from Iran. I've been working on languages all over the world. I'm working on Mandarin now, Cantonese. I worked on Malagasy, Kirundi, Nyarwanda, West African languages that I don't speak. So I know what it means to do field work when you go physically to go to collect the data, right? You can spend 6 months trying to understand how one language works. Right? So we say, well, we have endangered languages here. We don't wait 6 months or 6 years to start to dig one language, because that would be basically, we would probably not going to reach a simple goal. So what is the concept behind this is that with one bird, with one stone, we want to hit many birds. So that's the idea. So how are we going to do that? We see one example when I show a slide. By having this platform, not only we have a dictionary, but also we have sentences that tell us how the structure works. Then we can analyze those sentences and we can actually rebuild the structure of the language. Why? Well, go to the library, there is nothing written on the language. Okay? And we cannot go to Diane's, the only speaker that is left, and try to ask her, oh, can you tell me if this is a question mark? Is this an interrogative sentence? Is this a orative sentence? She doesn't care about that. Okay? So you need to figure out as a linguist, you say, okay, provide the data and I will figure out what's happening in the language. And if someone is writing, if I want to work on your language and I'm asking you some sentences, and then sometimes you want to twist me, I will show that you are lying, because there's some, I make a prediction. If you are able to have these type of sentences, I'm predicting that should be able to do that. Why? Because the language is something that is driven by the brain, and the brain has some rules that you need to follow. Don't miss it. Okay, so this is an example of a word that we were generating. So they were able to be capable. So they gave us the translation, cherish, okay, and we get the sound. What we do on our side is we will be filling in the IPA, the pronunciation, and we will define the category, we get the definition, and they provide an example, okay, in Lunaapeew and in English, and they pronounce it. Okay, can we hear the sound?
Yes. So I'll go back to the website. There you all. Right, so that would be on the dictionary form here. And the word we had in the slide was able, so I will search that up here. And it was this first option here. So when we click on that, we get the dictionary entry. So I'll see if I can play it for you all.
Cherish.
So there's a Lunaapeew recording of the word, and also we have the example sentence down here, and the recording is also provided, which you can hear right here. Sorry if it's a little loud.
Isha Arda Malwissel Quachmantale.
So hopefully for most of the words we get entered, they provide the pronunciation as well as the sentence pronunciation for those people who are unfamiliar with the IPA system of transcription, so you can understand how to pronounce them.
Okay, so here are the type of challenges that we start facing. If you are looking for the word that they gave us, quiche, you don't have it there, right? No? It's not there. What do we do? Well, we figure out something. Oh, there's one that looks like it. You see this first one? It's kind of linked to that one. You may wonder why.
So, if you haven't taken linguistics before, we're going to do a little exercise here. If you make a K sound, ka, 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 and then you make a G sound, ga, 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 you'll notice they're both pronounced in the same part of the mouth, or the dealing back there. So what we find here is actually a phenomenon, a linguistic phenomenon called prenasalized voicing. So we don't actually find quiche in this sentence here. What we find is Ndayiragije. So this is a phonological change. So there's something in the sentence, another consonant that's triggering the K, the ka, to turn into a nga sound here. So.
And this was discovered by our team,
He can
not me.
wipe the sweat from his brow now.
Okay, that was just a little example, but I'll come back to that to explain a little bit better. Now, we are talking about, we have the data in the dictionary, okay, we have all those sentences, okay, so what we do, okay, so the UTSC team start the second part of our business. So we start to deconstruct the sound system of the language, that we call the phonology. We start deconstructing how the word, the little morphemes marker get together to create words, okay? And we start reconstructing how these words get together to create the sentences, and how sentences get together to create big sentences, etc., etc., etc. Right? So these are three standard subfields of linguistics. Okay. So when we are looking into a language, we look into sounds. We understand how they are organized because there is an organization inside them. We move from the sound to the little syllable, we go into the word, okay? We see how the syllable get together to form a word. Then we take the words together to see how the sentence works. Okay? So that's basically the methodological approach. So if you want an illustration of what we discovered so far, because one great exploration series, so we observed, the student observed that they were able to retrieve the Lunaapeew consonant system and the Lunaapeew vowels. So you get this purple, tedana, kagana, sh, j, and l. And you have the vowels. Something that is really, really cool. That's what Matt was mentioning. So this is actually a discovery for us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 17, right? We would say that there are 17 consonants in Lunaapeew. Actually, it's not true. It's not 17. These b, d, g, n do not exist as underlying consonants. These are built. You create them. So you remember the quiche, gish, right? Okay, you see k and g, right? So basically the g exists because the k followed a nasal n. So when you get n plus k, you get ng. So we make a prediction. If you have n followed by t, you get nd. If you have a nasal on S, you will get j. In other words, basically, what we call the voice consonants are derived. They are not the underlying system. Okay, you don't. The prediction is that we never get g or d if there is no nasal before. Right? Okay. how we test this. So we have some, so we go into our database, we have some software that we use for sound analysis that we call Brent, and then another one that we use for the matching, that for regular expression, that the Python. So by using Pratt for the word that we get, okay, we get this type of spectrograms that will help us define the IPA, the phonetic alphabet of each word. Okay? So remember I mentioned that we didn't have, we leave this box blank, right? This type of analysis allows us to retrieve the word, and then we can tell, hey, this is how it should be pronounced. And that's how we generated the IPA form of that word. Okay? So we run this on each of these words, and we get the IPA that we're looking for. Now, I was talking about this, the prediction that we made. If we are, here is what Matt, okay, you can talk about it because it's you who designed it.
Okay. So the first one here, so it contains a b, or if it contains a b, it'll be an mba with an m. If it contains a d, it's going to have an n in front, and d. I don't have the nga up here just to make it a little simpler, but again, if it contains a nga, it'll have an ng in front of it. So then our prediction is if it contains one of those voice sounds, then that voice sound must be preceded by the nasal, the and n. So to test this prediction, we search our database for any words that contain a B or a D, and then we check if they're actually preceded by the nasal consonant. So to do this, we use regular expressions, which are a pattern matching tool. So they're a little technical, but this little regular expression here, it searches for all the words that contain a B or a D that are preceded by an M or an N. And when we run that on the database, we get 41 results. So we find there are indeed words in our database that are pre-nasalized. So the second regular expression here, this checks for all the words that contain a B and a D that are not preceded by an M and an N. So it looks for things like A, B, T, B, anything that's not a nasal in front of a B or a D. And we find that there are 0 results. So since we get 0 results, that means there's no occurrences of a B or a D that aren't pre-nasalized in our database. This suggests that it is indeed that all the occurrences of B and D must be preceded by an M or an N. So that's how we use regular expressions to help search our database to find out a little bit about the phonology.
Okay. Here is another application. When I talk about sound, we're talking about now, this language has a lot of syllables in it, and
Brent just confirmed what you just said. He said it's correct. Your analysis is correct. He said it's correct. So your system works. Good job.
So we move on and we try some other things. We are looking now into the morphology, like how these little sounds get together to create a word, right? So just look, I just want to just have an idea. We don't want to go into details, but look at this example in English. You say black cat. If we put cat in the plural, we get black cat. Okay? We don't say blacks, cats. Okay? But in languages like French, for instance, or other Roman languages, you will say petit, petite, for instance, it's sort of feminine, masculine. So in the NLP, so you get black cat, and you see when you put plural on it, when you do the plural form to get black cat, you see this little AK. Okay? You say, well, what is happening out there? Okay, actually there's nothing special that's happening. It's simply that in Lunaapeew, adjectives like black agree with the noun. So the way to show that there's an agreement, okay, you share the same ending. So we get basically blacks, cats. This helps a lot because now we can know, oh, well, if I get this Polish app, okay, I will know for sure that this is the plural form, so I can isolate the singular form, right? And then later on, I can jump into this to wonder if this ish should be also split, okay, into another thing. I wonder if this UW or SUW could be split, and then maybe the root will be the result. Okay, so that's the hypothesis, and we keep running the same thing, and we see what we come out with. Seems that we are on the right direction. So these are the examples that we take from our database, and we find exactly what we were predicting. Okay, this is how we use regular expression to basically probe our data. To recap, the tools that we are developing here, the first part of the tools I mentioned, linguistic resources. So basically, when we get to these type of resources, we start analyzing the language. We can tell exactly how it actually works. We don't have any textbook, we don't have anything, but now we are able to say, okay, this language works like this, which means that we can start creating our own sentences in the language. Okay. Next part is the e-learning tool. Safieh.
Okay, so far we all learned about documenting a language. Juvenal talked about how to document this language, so we are building up our database, but we are also we're sure we want to revitalize the language, and to do that, we are working on an e-learning tool, the part that I'm responsible for. So this e-learning tool is going to be an online platform where users can get together, or for individual users, to discover and learn this language. And basically, the platform is going to be a user-friendly, engaging, and authentic learning tool. So this is going to be a classroom environment, but in a virtual setting. It's just like the traditional classroom, but we work with an intelligent tutor who is going to teach you the language. That is going to teach you the language. And we are hoping to make this platform to connect members or people who are interested in learning this language. Our system is based on a 3-level, so it's a 3-level system. We have level 1, which is the basics. We have level 2, which is intermediate, and we have level 3, which is upper intermediate and advanced. I'm going to start with level 1, talk about level 1, level 2, and level 3 are going to be the same. So let's say a user is planning to learn this language. So they're going to start their journey with level 1. Level 1 is the basics. They're going to start with sounds, which are vowels and consonants. Let's say level 1, lesson 1. So in lesson 1, they're going to learn the vowels and they're going to consonants that our RAs discovered. So they will learn the vowels and consonants, and then lesson 2 will be about the syllable structure, what are the syllables, or what is the syllable structure of this language, and then they move on to words. They learn single words, very basic, simple words, and then they move on to learning how to put together these words to create sentences, simple sentences, and hopefully in level 2 and level 3, more complex sentences, and we are hoping by level 3, they will be able to create paragraphs. In each lesson, we are going to have videos, audio clips, and rules, and extensive practice exercises and quizzes at the end of each lesson. So for example, if they start with level 1, this is how it's going to be. For example, welcome to level 1, lesson 1. Are you ready to begin our learning journey? And we are now on the main landing page. Okay, my students tell me I'm always talking fast. Okay, so level 1 starts with the video. As I said, the intelligent tutor will teach them the sounds of the language. They will teach them the consonants, the vowels. But the video is not ready yet because I'm waiting for the other team to send us the data. So working on is creating games, because one of the fun ways to learn a new language is through games, as all of us know. So I'm thinking for each level and each lesson, we're gonna have some game after they learn, let's say, the sounds, the rules, the main concepts. They're gonna be tested using a game, and it's called game time. Let's say if they have, for example, they just learned the Lunaapeew consonants and vowels, they're gonna play a game, and they're gonna compare Lunaapeew consonants and vowels with English consonants and vowels and do some matching. At the end of each lesson, there will be a recap, so they're gonna review, let's say, vowels and consonants again. And the same, let's say, if they learned consonants and vowels and syllable structure in the review section, we talk about the syllables, we talk about those consonants, vowels, and we may ask them to put together some syllables. They also, as I said, each lesson contains a section, which is the vocabulary section, and they start with very basic vocabulary. So I'm a second language learner. I learned a lot of languages as a second language, not a lot. A few languages as a second language. These are the basic words we learned. When I started English, I started with book and apple and ball, and so these will be the basic vocabulary. And we are hoping to add a lot of pictures to the vocabulary section, so they learn through pictures. So it will be very interactive and visual. And then at the end of the lesson, they have the pronunciation section. Let's say once they learn the vocabulary, we're gonna ask them, so what they learn about vowels and consonants and syllables, once they learn the vocabulary, the user will be asked to, for example, pronounce the word, identify the sounds, because they already learned vowels and consonants. So they'll be asked to, for example, say what vowels are there, what consonants are there, how many syllables. For example, if the word is family, fam-a-li, they'll be asked to identify the syllables and pronounce the word, and the system will tell them if the pronunciation is correct. So there will be a green light. Yes, the pronunciation is perfect. It's yellow, almost close. Red, bad pronunciation. Try again. I used to resist this when I was learning English or French or any other language. And then, so once they work with the word, let's say they identify the syllable, they identify the vowels, consonants, then they need to give the English translation. And then they continue. As well as pronunciation, we are thinking of also teaching our users the spelling. So once they pronounce the word, they'll be asked, it's like a whiteboard. They'll be asked to write the word to check the spelling. So the spelling will also be checked. Again, there's the green light, the yellow light, the red light. Now, there are some activities at the end of each lesson. They can do the activities by themselves, just individual activity, or they can choose to do the group activity. If there are other users that are online, they can do a group activity with other users who are online at the same time. Once the lesson is finished, let's say level 1, lesson 1, there will be a quiz. Depending on what they learned in that lesson, let's say if it's consonants and vowels, the quiz will be on consonants and vowels, and maybe some vocabulary. There will be matching, there will be fill in the blank, multiple choice, and true, false. Yeah, so, so we are designing this app. Well, it's not an app yet. For now, we call it an e-learning tool, but we are hoping to develop it into an app. There are a lot of challenges, but the main challenge for us right now is we need to design it for a wide range of users. We need to design it for children, we need to design it for young children, for adults. So based on the goals, based on our users, we need to modify the materials. I don't think the same template, the same app can be used for everyone, because there are people who want their children to learn this language as their first language, so the goal is different. But there are people, let's myself. I just want to learn it for fun because I'm interested, right? So the materials have to be modified based on our users, based on the goal. I think I'm on the next slide. And also, one other challenge that we have right now, we need user experience. We don't know how the experience will be until they start using it. So what we're going to do is we are going to test it with our users before we even make it available to people, or for example, for public use. We are thinking to have a set of users, let them use the app and give us feedback. And based on that feedback, we'll just modify it and make it better. I think I went over like 3 slides. My students always write on my evaluations. She's always ahead of her slides. Okay. Okay, now, how can we achieve this? We need to have defined goals. For now, we do have defined goals. Our priority is our users. We are thinking about who our users are going to be. We need to have a stable product. We're working really hard to make sure that it's something stable, and also it's something that is easy to navigate. So I'm looking at a lot of learning apps, especially second language learning apps that are out there. I'm looking at them to see which one is easy to navigate, which one is user-friendly, so we can use it as a model. And also, we need clear presentation. We're thinking about colors. We're thinking about the background. And yeah, and basically, I guess that's it. And one of the goals is to use a lot of media and to make sure that our users are, we're not going to just teach them grammar, sounds, or vocabulary. We need to make sure that the users feel they are in an authentic learning or are experiencing something authentic. When I learned English as a second language, or French, or Arabic, or Turkish, I always learned the rules. I always read grammar books, attended classes, but I was never in a learning environment where I learned, for example, let's say, the word sorry. So I learned the word sorry back in my country, but the first time I was put in an English-speaking environment, I said, sorry, can I ask a question? And the person told me, why are you sorry for asking a question? Because in my country, you say, sorry, can I ask a question? So we want to make sure, yeah, the person said, why are you sorry? You're just asking a question. So apparently I was supposed to use excuse me, right? So we want to make sure that through the use of media, videos, audio, music, we create context where these users feel they are in that environment and they see the context and they speak in a context. Yes, it's virtual, but we want to make it as a virtual reality. And I guess that's it, Juvenal. I want you to come back.
Okay.
Yes. So that's what we're doing right now, creating an e-learning tool.
Let me recap and talk about the big picture. So for us, Lunaapeew is like a test, okay, of what we are doing, but we envision something bigger than just working with one language. So we already, when Matt showed you the sound that we have developed, we already have a domain name in the UTSC library, digital library. That's where our website is located. That's where we'll be storing our material. And we call it the Canadian Institute for Endangered Languages. It's a name to provoke Bill because we'll be moving to that direction. We know he will be excited for that one. You already told us. So here is the idea. Here is the idea. We will be working on different languages using the same platform, right? Using the same methodology, right? It's basically reloading, but the infrastructure is already there. So currently, we are working on the Lunaapeew for the dictionary, the linguistic corpora, and the analysis that we are conducting, and the e-learning tool that we are developing. Chippewa, which is a language that's spoken in different places in Ontario, is where people from Chippewa on the towns are interested to join this project. So we will be adding Chippewa into our system. Then later, we will be adding more languages. Now, look at this. This map many of the indigenous languages in Ontario. Our target, basically, the product that we are designing is aimed to be usable for any of these community who will find it useful in order to promote the language. Which means that the tool we use to collect the language will be available. So someone who said, oh, I speak Potawatomi, okay? We say, we want to use your platform. So you want to use our platform, it's very, very simple. You can create a dictionary with that one. We can analyze the sentence automatically. You can use the e-learning tool, just remove some Lunaapeew word and plug in the Potawatomi word and sentences and images, anything that you don't need to. It's like we don't want to do things like in the old style way. I'm writing this textbook to teach this language, and you spend 5 years writing that one, and then someone else gets some funding to do the same for another language, and then basically we are in a waste civilization, or wasting, when we can just use one platform and then spread it to many languages. But there is another goal that is behind this. We actually want to connect communities. There are some dialect variation. I remember when we went to the Delaware First Nation, and I was discussing with this, they say, oh, in Chippewa, if you use this word, and they say, okay, which one should we use in our lesson? They say, well, you use both, okay? Because we want to keep both. Okay? You don't say, we are going to use the Chippewa, or we are going to use the Lunaapeew. Use the Lunaapeew for Lunaapeew, and use Chippewa for Chippewa. But the good thing about this is that we will be able to connect the language, so we can find like a direct variation. Basically, we can say, the Chippewa that is spoken competent in Norfolk, Ontario, and the Chippewa that is spoken here in South Ontario. We want to see the differences. We want the community to see, here are the dialect. Here is where we have the linguistic variation, and that will actually help connecting this nation, connecting the community, have a network, a powerful network where they can do things together, and together means them and us.
There would be a question mark if it was a question. Oh, that's good.
So thank you, our teams at the Brent and Matthew, great presentation. And I'm now opening it up to questions and answers. Each refresh your drinks. This is drink really well. And always, you're informed, well rested, and you can ask questions. It's great. Michelle's really good. Go ahead.
First question, going back to the previous slide that was on the screen, how many languages were represented in southern Ontario, approximately?
I have no idea.
Okay.
We didn't do any statistics yet. We were brought into the Lunaapeew. That's going to be our next actually. And our partners will help with that one. Wendy is in connection with most of these people. So we will be going through her connection and start talking to those people and ask if they are willing to join.
My wife wanted me to ask this question, so she had to step out, but I'll ask you. English, I find a very imperialistic language. I sent both my kids to a French school, but you can be sure whenever they got a chance, they started speaking English, just like everybody else. And Brent, I think you mentioned earlier that children are the foundation going forward, so I'm just wondering, if they're the major pillars, what's your attitude or your take on the revitalization of the project by the youth, by the children? Because I can tell you, my kids go 30%, yeah, Dad, whatever, I can go watch TV in English or whatever. Do you have that same sort of pushback, or the children, the youth in that group saying, no, I really want to learn my native tongue?
Our children actually really want to learn their language. One of the things that in my own work, trying to create a school in the community based on culture and languages, is that our whole thought process is rooted in the language. The way that we interact with creation is rooted in the language. And so that's one of the major reasons why people see the importance of revitalizing the language. It's not about, how Wendy in her opening spoke about how it's a way of life, right? So the language is tied to our way of life. And, and when you look at the slides and you look at their study and they're recognizing the sounds, the sounds are based on the vibrations of the earth, right? So the more you learn the language, the more connected you become with the earth, right? And so our children have been starving for identity and a sense of identity. And for them to hold up their language and say, go anywhere in the world and say, I am Lunaapeew because I speak my language. So that's a huge piece. So we recognize that it cannot be taught. It can be, and it will be, but, for revitalization, it has to be taught as a first language, not as a second language. And that's one of the steps in the process that we're going to be going forward with.
Most of I would assume all of the native languages come from an oral tradition, and yet we are now translating those oral sounds into English letters. How do you do that?
That's one of the challenges, and I think that's one of the challenges that they're going to be faced with when they meet the team in our community, because the translations are quite interesting. Because just for an example is dog, like the word for dog in our language is Moghaddam, and Moghaddam doesn't just mean dog, right? It means the one that's always ready. The one that's always ready, right? And if you have a dog, he's always ready, waiting for you to tell him what to do, right? Cuddles, kisses, whatever, they're always waiting for you. And another example is our word for squirrel is pusakalinjao. And pusakalinjao means sticky fingers, right? So it's and we joke because some of our kids call Spider-Man Pusakalinjao, because he's got sticky fingers, right? So but we know it as squirrel, right? And not just any squirrel, it's the gray squirrel, right? And so there's another word for the red squirrel, and that word, I forget what it is at the moment, but it means yellow hands. So it's red, but if you look at its hands, it's yellow. So it's very descriptive, right? And that's the challenges I think that we're going to face, and the dialogue that we're going to have when we get into the project even more in depth.
I just want to add to that
the type of thing that he's describing is actually a universal property. You find it in many other languages. And what we do in linguistics is that when you have this lexical entry in the dictionary, so you put the word there. I didn't want to put a lot of stuff in the slide. So you have the word there, and you give a word-by-word translation before you provide the meaning. It's not only for the example, like where you see word, it's also even for inside the word, you can see a morpheme that is there. Something like, you see like a word like, in English, you say, like, I don't want to use this word, but kill, right? So the word kill in many languages will be actually cause to die, right? So you get this cause morpheme, and then you have the word die, and you put them together in order to get that meaning of killing. And these Aboriginal, indigenous languages are known to be agglutinating languages, where you see a lot of morphology. When English is like analytical, you have a word that are spread there. So the language tends to put these morpheme inside one word, and you want to identify those morpheme. An interesting thing is that when we're running our dictionary, when we're probing our dictionary, for instance, Matt said, actually our dictionary has a lot of verbs. There are no nouns there. Well, actually the nouns are in the verb.
Just following up on the whole concept of a language that has been oral for many generations. Now that they're using what I think is properly called the Roman alphabet to write the language, are they trying to get the older people to relate the stories, the history, the traditions, and get them written down so that they can be passed down as well?
It's a very good question, and we have a clear position on it. One is writing is a social responsibility. Writing, okay. So it will be up to the community to decide how they want the language to be written, and we are lucky that the first language speaker remaining, Diane Snake, is very involved in the project. So we rely on her. We will ask her, based on your knowledge, based on the values that are behind the language, how do you want the language to be written, right? And she will be bringing that to the council, and they will decide. But it's not us to decide how they're going to write the language. Absolutely no.
And the thing with that is that, you know, we need to recognize that everybody learns differently, right? And we need to create options as far as learning goes. A perfect example is my son. My son is a very visual learner, you know, and for that reason we have him at home homeschooling, because he doesn't fall into the box that is Western education, right? And we recognize, and if you talk to my son, he's very articulate. You know, he uses big words, but for him to read it is a different story. You know, so our focus is on his strength, and at the same time teaching him the skill of writing. You know what I mean? We're not telling him that it is the end-all, be-all, but it is a skill that you must learn, and you will learn it at your own pace. But at this point, we will focus on your strength, which is your visual learning. So we have to keep those things in mind when we look at language.
Given it is oral, you only have one speaker left, is there any way, and it's not written, what fraction of the language to be sure that you are actually capturing? Is it going to be a fraction of the language that is going to be missed?
I don't believe so. I think one of the things that with this project, that they've hit on a couple of things, you know, with the sounds, and that's awesome. But I think from me watching the learners right now, is that they all have different strengths. And I think each one of them will come out of that immersion program teaching in a different style. You know what I mean? Like, she's disseminating the information to them. And she's focused a lot on her writing. She's focused a lot on the grammar. And right now she's building their confidence in talking. So they can read it.
It's mostly her ability to remember
Yes.
all the words.
Yes.
I'm not sure I can remember every English word I ever learned.
No,
I'm not sure I can do that.
no, it will morph. Like every language morphs, every language evolves. And the idea is to, with Juvenal's help, look at the root as well.
It's a very, just to follow up on this one, that is the type of question that is at the heart of our research. What we care the most is to know how the structure of the language is, because even in English, okay, you create a new word. We have to create a new word, right? I want to Google, okay? I want to email someone, right? So we create a new word, but we don't create them in anarchy. We follow rules. So which means that what is actually most important is understanding the rules that define the language, and then the community can create a new word. That's quite true for any language, basically. If you look at Old English and you look at modern English, you see that the words that are not there anymore. If you think of the professional word, okay, we keep creating a new word based on business. That's what they call lexicography, adding a new word, but the most important thing, add them following in accordance with the structure of the language.
Just a question that I've had for a long time, because you do see some things on TV about trying to keep languages, Indigenous languages, going in the country. And I just have this thought, like you've got, I'm sure it's been done out there, but I'm wondering if you're looking at models. You see like a preschool setting, really little guys that are learning languages, and in this city you're watching kids, my next door neighbors, learning 2 or 3 languages at once, okay? And they're taking a lot in. They may be a little more delayed in speaking it out, and the parents get all concerned, and I said to my neighbor, just leave it. He's processing it, leave him alone. He's a bright kid, he'll be fine. And he is. She just got impatient. But what about preschool programs that would bring the parents at a time when they are very, very highly motivated on behalf of their child? It's a natural thing. Everybody has that. Very, very strong sense that you can tap into, and the parent and the child, the baby, can be learning the language together, and the mother or father doesn't feel like an idiot or the grandma because they're teaching it to the kid. And if you've ever watched a kid who's a bit learning disabled showing a younger kid how to read a book, they're not embarrassed because the younger kid doesn't know any better, but it's a reinforcement for the senior in the relationship. So I'm just wondering if there's a real opportunity here to grab preschoolers, really little guys, and their parents, grandparents, whatever, whoever comes in with them to the preschool play setting, and do it there where there's really no judgment, no stigma, everybody's relaxed. I don't know, anyone with experience of that?
Most definitely. Those are called language nests, and that's one of the things that our research has found, is that children, the life of a language will not live without the whole family learning it. Okay, and that's a huge piece. That's why we talk about Western schools. You know, they teach Indigenous languages, they teach French, and you know they're not going to become fluent in that setting, because by the time they go home, they're not asking their parents to go to the bathroom in the language. You know, it's lost. So very much language has to become a family unit thing.
You mentioned about the evolution of language. Your source that you're doing your resource data mining, I'm assuming she's doing songs with part of her teachings. I'm also curious about this woman's source. Was she exposed to English in order to talk to her students? Was she a survivor of the Indigenous residential schools?
Actually, she was. And one of the things that we've recognized, we had linguists come into the community during the 50s and 60s, and a lot of our old people, that's where the evolution of the language stopped. And during the 80s, 70s and 80s, some of the first language speaker women got together and started making new words. Like, you know, for policemen, firemen, you know, different things, but they only got so far. So the hope is that, you know, she's going to disseminate this information on to her students now. And as they teach, the great minds of our children will, you know, help that language evolve as they go forward.
Because Diane's been working with different languages. She teaches at the language program up north. She's been teaching them and working with different languages for the last 20 years. So she's an absolute student of her language. She just is remarkable in that way, but she is also very much, you know, like when you were asking about the Roman alphabet, yes, there are huge limitations with the Roman alphabet, because I think the only thing that because I worked on the Chippewa project side, one of the pieces is, you know, phonetically, how do you read some of the words, right? Because when you want to look at them when you're a learner, it's like some of the words I would look at and I'm like, huh? Because the traditional dictionaries that exist, they're written in a very academic way, and I think that's the benefit of what these guys are trying to do, is to take away that academic fortitude that's been in existence for a long time, learning the language and bringing it into making it accessible for everyone. Because that's been the problem, I think, that we've seen over time, is that none of our Indigenous languages have been available for anyone to learn. And you know, and that's the whole point of what I believe reconciliation is about. We're never going to learn about each other if we don't understand each other in the most pure sense of our foundation of how our cultures are built. It's built on that oral tradition, and it's built on the very essence and meaning of those words, and that creational view, and all of those different pieces are tied to that. And those links, yes, it's not perfect. I mean, there's things that are still everybody's trying to figure out, but I think that's where people need to know what the challenges really are. That, you know, there's not enough funding out there. I'm gonna keep saying that over and over again. You know, yes, the Trudeau government said this much money, but I tell you, it is not easy. There isn't the resources there. We don't have tons and tons of people to pull in and say, let's do this. It just doesn't exist right now. Everything that we do mostly by the seat of our pants to try and pull people together to see what we can do in very short projects, whereas, you know, I think this project hopefully will be a more permanent thing here and will help build on the foundation of creating those resources for everybody to learn, because it is a beautiful language. My kids, you know, yeah, they resist sometimes, but you know, it's really cool sometimes to watch them joke around, because they'll throw away Lunaapeew words into their conversations as they're going, and they feel comfortable and confident enough to do that. And to me, that's the fun part of watching my own kids learn, because they are just, it's just neat to watch them just when they hear a word, sometimes they get a bang right off the bat, and then, other times it might take a little bit of practice, but to watch them really understand and do those things, it's just, to me, it's one of those aha moments, and lights me up.
Yes?
My understanding is that the North American First Nations people are grouped in language groups. So in Ontario, they would be the Algonquin speaker and the Iroquois speaker. How does that relate to what you're doing? Is there like a core that you could say would be an Algonquin language and these 10 other sub-languages fit in?
Yes, linguists of old have grouped us into family groupings, and Algonquin-speaking people were east of the Mississippi, and then there was Iroquois people mixed in there, and we joke around our house because my wife is an Anishinaabe, and she speaks Anishinaabe, and we're Lunaapeew, and there's this idea that the Lunaapeew are the grandfather language. And so I tease her, I said, well, our language is older than yours anyway. Yours is just a baby language of ours, right? Linguistically, I think because of regional differences, the languages have changed and evolved over time. But at the core, and looking at the core is one of the great things that a lot of our Indigenous linguists, our language speakers have been looking at lately, is the similarities in the languages as opposed to the differences, and I think as we build strength, we'll be looking at that even more.
At what point will this become available to those who are not Lenape, Anishinaabe, or any other Indigenous culture? Because I'm of the day of the language lab here at UTSC. And I see the e-learning, and I think it's wonderful. When will it become available to us who are not Indigenous?
Let's do a big dream, so I'll let you talk about it.
As soon as we get the data, and it's gonna be soon. they promise.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Just looking at the program, maybe just because it's kind of simple, the rules that surround the language, it appear to be fairly simple. So there aren't a lot of exceptions to things. One of the things about English is so many exceptions you need a separate rule book just to keep track of them. Just actual rules of how you do things.
It's as you mentioned, it's a general property of natural languages. But something that is crucial here is that a language is not anarchy. A language has rules. Let me give you a simple example, and then you can understand what I mean. Okay, Bill stole my book. Okay, so now you can ask a question. Okay, who stole my book? Okay, or you can ask a question. Or which book did Bill steal? Right. So we know how English asks question. Okay. Then if you try Mandarin or Cantonese, you're gonna get something like Bill stole what. Okay. So in English, you're gonna put what at the beginning of the sentence. In Mandarin or Cantonese, you're gonna put what where the noun book was. Right. Now, for us, that's a little thing because that's something that you can predict. So here is now something that I want you to think of. We were able to say which book did Bill steal. Now try this one. I know the guy who stole my book. In English, can you question book? Which book do you know the guy who stole? Right? Question mark. The sentence is bad, right? Yeah? The sentence is ungrammatical. If someone else speaks a language other than English and try that sentence, you're going to find the sentence ungrammatical. First, you can try it. Kirundi, Lunaapeew can try it. The sentence will be ungrammatical. You wonder why. We didn't meet to decide that in that case the sentence will be ungrammatical, right? Because there are rules that are there that tells you if you want to create this type of sentence, there is a domain. There is a syntactic domain where you're allowed to do these things. So those type of properties are what we are interested in. And when we're talking about similarities, when we're thinking of these indigenous languages, you find all those similarities there, and you're going to see that the differences are very, very minimal. It's just a little thing. It's like a switch on, switch off, kind of. So languages are actually very, very similar. We have this, the structure is the same, it's just this little differences. Some people tell me, you know what, Cantonese is very complicated. I say, well, what do you mean? What is complicated in Cantonese? There's nothing complicated in the language in terms of structure. The structure is the same. And if I'm doing field work on Cantonese and you try to write to me, I will know that you are writing to me. Because I ask you, okay, how do you create this sentence? You give me one sentence. How about this one? You give me another. And then I try another sentence and I say, I'm making the prediction that you should be able to have this form if you accept the other one. And the prediction is borne out. You try that in English, you try that in French, you try that in any natural language. So that's what we do in linguistic theory. Basically, we show that that's why she was mentioning about preschool. Why kids pick the language so easily? Well, because the language is very, very simple, actually, contrary to what we think. It's just a combination. Take A, put and add B, and you get C, and get this recursive. Then you can say, hey, in some cases, you can take this one and you put there. But when you already have this one in that position already taken, so you can't do anything else. That's how you see how sentences become formed. If you see that example that we have with AK, with black cat, okay, you don't say that this is a big difference. That's a little thing, because you can say, you know what, in English, you don't create an agreement between the adjective and the noun. Black cats. In this language, you create an agreement. Do you consider that as a difference? It's a little thing, okay? Just copy the feature that you have there on the noun. In that language, that copy is switched off. That's it.
Yes. Early on, this is Brent, mentioned something that kind of caught me is you mentioned about what a squirrel is called and what dog really mean in your language. And it touches on something like in the limited sort of languages and now that I know, is that there's a lot of subtle things that are not syntactic, not language, not learning the sound, not forming sentences. It's got to do with the cultural tradition, et cetera, So prompted me to think about this is, yeah, you can pick up a language and it's extending and you want to revitalize it, you want people to speak it, etc. The question I have is, there are many languages in this world. Have you studied them? What are the true values that you see, because that can enlighten people to say, aha, that's why you are interested in the language, not just the technical aspect and the structural aspect and the continuation of a language tradition aspect, but what motivates and compels you and attracts you to go and learn a language? What is the bigger mission? What will drive you to keep you going and learning? Because it just strikes me there's something much more fundamental that is the holy grail of learning languages. And I'm dying to say, if you see what that is it just to allow a tradition to continue? Does it preserve? And what about people from other cultures coming in and learn a language? If they learn something about a different way of expressing a sense of humor that doesn't exist in their culture. To me, those are much tougher to capture, but those kind of the holy grail of learning languages, because they're all technical and you only have so much brain power to learn them. You know what I'm getting at is, what is it?
I think for us, it's our reconnection to the earth. One of the things that I get envious when I hear Diane and her students speaking is the laughter. Is that they're constantly laughing when you're talking. And it's almost musical at the same time. You know, it's almost like you can see their vibrations, their vibrations elevating as they talk more and more and more. And it goes back to ceremony, like, you know, our way of life is very much entrenched in ceremony and song and connecting with the earth. And I think as you hear that language in those ceremonies, it's an awakening. It's an emotional response. You know, and you're not saying I'm crying, or you're not saying this is how I'm feeling. Just by the sound of the language, you know what that person is experiencing. You know, so it's a deeper connection to earth, but a deeper connection to each other. You know, that's the holy grail for me, is being able to speak to creation and feel its vibration at the same time.
As someone that funded this project, after I reviewed the TRC report, I've had many conversations with who actually expressed.
Could you speak up a bit, please?
Sure. So I was just explaining that as a funder. Is this on? Yes.
Yeah,
as a funder of this project, after reading the TRC report and working with Wendy, who actually expresses herself very well in English, the central cultural influence of language hit me. That, you know, it isn't just, we have many other activities that we are doing on campus that support integration of Indigenous materials in our coursework. But to really get to understand a First Nation group, you really do need that linguistic piece, because it's an expression of who they are, not just a means of communication, although it is, but it's much more so. And so that's why this revitalization project was put in place, and it's not just an add-on, it's really central to, in my opinion, after reading the TRC, and it never occurred to me prior to that report. So I'm really glad you raised that, because it isn't just something fun. It is fun, but it's very, very critically central to what's happening.
I think if you were able to articulate what that really something is, that really drives the passion of learning, as opposed to just shared thought.
Yes, I agree.
They're you would laugh at a particular language if you translate it, you say, okay, how did that?
Yeah.
To me, that was, you know, something that needs to be.
So if we're going to reconcile, we need to have that deeper understanding. I think that comes with language, and especially as those groups regain their languages. So.
That's where our resilience comes from. Our resilience comes from our spirit, craziness, and some of those things are totally
Unfortunately, our time is coming to a close. Thank you very much for attending these series of seminars, and we look forward to seeing all of you in the fall. I want to thank our speakers, Professor Moghaddam, Professor Ndayiragije. Yes, is that close? That's probably not perfect, but And Elder Stonefish for coming today. And do you want to do a closing? I see you're great.
When my brother, who is not here today, when he was learning the language, when he was first starting to learn the language, he come up with a song that's part of our revitalization. And the two words in the song are Watamase Anishik. And that means thank you to the one we pray to. Okay?